So this concept check covers everything in section 2, which is a lot. It covers the carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So list and describe the 4 main biochemicals. That would be everything we had in the chart, so make sure you know that. And the charts that I'm talking about are these. So there's nucleic acids and proteins and lipids and carbohydrates. So basically you need to know the elements, the monomers, the dimers, the polymers, and the functions, and the bonds for each of those. So you'll get at least one question off of each of those. The next question is, why are phospholipids so important? Well, they form the membranes. They separate, they are a hydrophobic barrier and separate the extracellular from the intracellular cytoplasm. And so that is important to make a cell. If you don't have phospholipids, you don't have a cell. List and describe the 4 levels of protein structure. So what they're talking about here is these 4. So if you just have a single chain, it's an amino acid list of amino acids. That's a primary structure. When you start to have the pleated sheets and the helical shapes and the random coils, those are the secondary structure. When you put them all together, that makes the tertiary structure. And if you just have one polypeptide chain, that's a tertiary structure. If you have more than one polypeptide chain, then that is a quaternary structure. So that is a little bit about the protein structures. And why is ATP an important molecule for cells? It has just the right amount of energy in those second and third bonds to do the work of the cell. So if you break the bonds, then you can release just the right amount of energy to do the work in the cell. Okay. Okay, so going on to section 3, this is not on the test, but it is kind of a link between the first and the second unit. So section 3, recall 3 common characteristics common to all, or characteristics common to all cells. And so cells are the fundamental, or in my definitions, it's the basic unit of structure and function of life. And so I really like my short, simple definitions. It's the basic or fundamental unit of, and my definition is going to be a little bit longer, of structure and function of life. So that is, to me, the best, like just a real, it covers everything. So it's a huge aggregate of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, nitrogen, and other atoms. The most common elements, C, H, O, N, P, and S. And it follows the basic laws of chemistry and physics, and that's why you need to know chemistry and physics before you come and study biology. It produces characteristics, reactions, and products that can only be described as living. So some of the fundamental characteristics of cells are they're sometimes only one-celled. So protozoa, bacteria, they're single cell, animals and plants, they are multicellular. Where this is a single cell, this is unicellular. All cells, so they could be multicellular or unicellular. The cells have, so organisms can be multicellular, unicellular, but all cells have a few common characteristics. They are spherical, sometimes polygonal, cuboidal, cylindrical. They have a protoplasm encased in cell membrane, which we call the cytoplasm. cytoplasm. So that is one structure that's found in all cells. They have a cell membrane that's found in all cells. They have DNA, and it's double-stranded DNA, and they have ribosomes. And so even if they're a bacteria cell and they don't have a nucleus, they still have double-stranded DNA, and they have ribosomes, and they're complex in function. So these are 4 characteristics. They have cytoplasm, cell membrane, DNA, and ribosomes. All cells have those things. So eukaryotic cells, they are what compose eukaryotic organisms, such as animals, plants, fungi, and protozoan. And they're the difference, and we've talked about this difference, so this you do need to know. They contain a nucleus, and that includes membrane-bound organelles, and for growth and nutrition and metabolism. So bacteria do not have a nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. And I say this because they do have ribosomes, because that's found in all cells. But that's not a membrane-bound organelle. And so they say they don't have organelles, but they just don't have membrane-bound organelles. And they're very structurally complex because they have to do all the functions within that cytoplasm area. And they can engage in nearly every activity that eukaryotic cells, and some, like anaerobic respiration, that eukaryotic cells cannot. So that is it. That is our basic introduction to the cell. What is the basic definition of a cell? What are the basic shapes of cells? How are bacteria and archaea different than eukarya? And so I'll give you a few minutes to think about that. So pause and then come back and we'll answer those questions. Okay, so if you took a few minutes and you paused the video so that you could answer these questions, the basic definition of a cell is that it is the basic unit of structure and function of life. And the cell shapes, they can be round, they can be polygonal, they can be cuboidal, they can be cylindrical. So those are some of the basic shapes of cells. How are bacteria and archaea different than eukarya? Well, eukarya, by its definition, it has a true nucleus. It has a nucleus, and bacteria and archaea do not have a nucleus. Eukarya are bigger than our bacteria and archaea. Eukarya are about 10 times bigger, and also they have membrane-bound organelles, which bacteria and archaea do not. They are similar in that they both have a cell membrane, they have a cell cytoplasm, they have ribosomes and DNA, so double-stranded DNA for their genome. And so that is the end of Chapter 2 and the end of this first unit. So let's plug on. We've got 5 more units to go, and it's super exciting. I hope you enjoyed this, and let me know if you have questions.